through dementia. And now I would like to introduce Judy Johansen.
Thank you so much, Christine. I'm happy to be here tonight and grateful to see some familiar faces and some new faces as we try to map out this winding road through caregiving of someone with dementia. You can go ahead. What we hope to cover today is caregivers. Who are they? Maybe it's you. Concern. If you have concerns, maybe we should be looking for a diagnosis of someone we love. Mapping the road ahead. When it's time for the caregiver to take the wheel, late stage support, and then bereavement. Where does the caregiving journey begin? Maybe you're noticing something in your loved one and that they're acting differently, and you're questioning what's going on. Something is off. Maybe things are being forgotten, not showing up to appointments, setting out to do a familiar project around the home and never getting around to it, sleeping more in the daytime. Perhaps your loved one is losing interest in hobbies and social activities and having a hard time with word retrieval. Executive function. Perhaps they're having problem with work issues, scheduling time, and being unable to complete well-known tasks. Difficulty in remembering directions that require more than one step. An example of this that I can share is saying to your loved one, please make sure you set the washer machine on delicates when you throw the clothes in the dryer. Would you please remember to hang my new 2 shirts instead of putting them in with everything? And then there could be personality changes. You seem, these are a bit of experienced truths that I'm sharing here. After that instruction that I gave him, and the shirts ended up in the dryer, I said, you seem completely unfazed that I'm so upset because my new shirts shrunk because you did put them in the dryer after I asked you not to. Or, why are the shades down at 2 in the afternoon and you are sitting in the same spot where you were sitting when I left 4 hours ago? Financial confusion. You paid the mortgage out of an account that we keep less than $500 in. The account and the system that you yourself set up for us. Or you've forgotten your bank password again. Small incidents with the car. Unexplained scratches, dents, backing up, parking challenges, straying on the road and missing stop signs. Not taking care of yourself. Sometimes people will wear the same clothes repeatedly. They may forget to brush their teeth or forget to eat or stay hydrated. These are all signs that something might be off. Next, please. There are some abnormal memory changes. When people become lost in familiar places, that can be concerning. Forgetting important dates or the wrong use of a kitchen appliance. An example of that might be placing a bowl on the counter and pressing the control buttons on the microwave. And when the microwave is dinging, realizing your food is not warm the way you expected it to be. And that's because the bowl never got put into the microwave. Sometimes people can use the wrong soap in the dishwasher. And I can attest to the fact that this can create knee-high suds in a kitchen. Next. The Alzheimer's Association helps us learn about 10 warning signs to look for. Memory loss, changes in mood, hard to complete a familiar task, confusion of place and time, social withdrawal, poor judgment, struggling to communicate, and changes in vision. There can also be work performance changes. Most of our waking hours are spent at work. Colleagues may notice changes before family members do, as the most of our waking hours is spent with our colleagues. It is so easy to overlook things in our early morning or evening hours spent at home together, when we may be tired and less tuned in to what's going on with our loved ones. You may want to ask your loved one if there's been any new concerns or problems at work with calendar management, emails, or being unable to complete financial reports, forgetting appointments, and managing a timeline. Ask them if it is harder to follow through with the tasks they usually do. Is there anything new happening with them at work that they may want to share with you? And you may want to ask about status of recent performance reviews. Next. I'd like to mention that we have a wonderful social worker on the call tonight, Karen Wanamaker. And Karen, at any point, if you want to jump in and offer your expertise, please feel free, okay? So getting answers to what is going on. First thing you should do is call your primary care physician and schedule an appointment if you have concerns that something may be up. Next. Trust your instinct and convey your observations. Write a list of concerns prior to your doctor's appointments. Bring someone with you to the appointment to have a second set of ears. Advocate for answers. Knowledge is power. Some medical issues that contribute to memory and thinking changes may be reversible. Patients with a diagnosis can map out a course to navigate and create a plan of care. Some patients and families may be hesitant to seek a diagnosis, but receiving one is an important step to receiving support. Early diagnosis is optimal for planning. It may not always happen, but if you can experience an early diagnosis, it can be helpful. And some of the things that it can do is it can encourage those dealing with the disease to take an active role and participate in the planning of their future care. It helps you to realize that time is precious and that you should enjoy the time you have together. Early diagnosis offers the opportunity to talk to other families who may be facing the same disease, which will make you open to new relationships and open to new experiences. Managing family members. It might be good to have a family meeting with an open dialogue. Give everyone something to do. Sometimes people are at a loss to know what to do, and if they're assigned a role, it's much easier for them to be involved. Keep the family informed and involved. Talk to children and grandchildren and be open with them about what's going on. In my experience, our grandchildren were the ones who dealt most easily with Steve through his confusion. Have backup plans. I used to say to people, you never know when you might have an appendicitis attack or something simple like that. And having a backup plan to help with someone really can aid in those times. Recognize that everyone deals differently. We are all affected by our loved one's diagnosis in a different way, and try to be open and understanding to each other as we deal with it in our own way. Help each other with the language needed to talk about the issues at hand. Again, trying to be kind, patient, and gentle with each other not just the person who's been diagnosed, but with each other as we go through these things, can make all the difference in the world for everybody. So that strapping, handsome man that you see in the picture is my husband, Steve. And this is us. This is Steve and I. And the reason I'm here tonight is because my darling placed his trust in me and asked me to be the steward of his care. Prepared or not, more like not, I accepted the role. At age 58 and a half, Steve received a poor performance review at work. He was devastated as he had prided himself in the integrity of his work. Having been a construction project manager in the Special Projects Division at Northeastern University meant that he was dealing with complex schedule coordination, enormous fiscal planning, personnel issues, and so much more. At the time, we were watching his mother in her 4th year post-Alzheimer diagnosis, and we had an idea of what it looked like, and it had literally become Steve's worst fear for himself. I had tried to give little thought to things like him repeatedly forgetting his bank password or losing his keys at work, and I would run in and show up and find them in his pocket. But the evidence was there, and I just didn't want to acknowledge it. After his poor performance review, he immediately said, "I think I have Alzheimer's, but I'm too young." We trusted his instinct and visited his general practitioner immediately, and then pushed through 5 months of testing, which led us to the heartbreaking diagnosis of probable Alzheimer's 1 month shy of his 59th birthday. We were overwhelmed and knew we needed to seek counsel immediately from his neurologist, the Alzheimer's Association, a social worker, and friends and family. Trying to piece together a consolidated plan sometimes felt like searching for a needle in a haystack. I spent hours and hours online. We had a care consultation at the Alzheimer's Association. We met with an elder law attorney and decided to live as well as we could, knowing that our time together was limited. Steve felt strongly that he wanted to be involved in the planning for our future. It was not always easy to discuss, as we couldn't imagine a future devoid of one another. And we would often abandon conversations that would inevitably become wrought with emotion. In hindsight, I wish we had spent more time discussing these difficult topics more in depth, so I could have felt less conflicted when faced with unfathomable decisions later in this disease. In my heart of hearts, I know he had ultimate trust in me, and that helped when I did have to make decisions. I'm grateful that he was diagnosed before he was too impaired to understand what the road ahead might look like. Having all of this information presented in one place will hopefully help other caregivers to access numerous resources with ease and save them from surfing the web all night when attempting to piece together a roadmap to care. Undoubtedly, my most successful days as a caregiver were the ones when I said, "I need help." Next slide. Mapping the road ahead. Keep calm. Help is all around you. And even though it may not feel like it, you are not the first to travel this path. I've lost the slides. There we go. Okay. Planning is key. Start early. It's not easy, but it's vital. Things may not change for some time. Take advantage of the time that you have. Get into those uncomfortable conversations. They're worthwhile for a few reasons. Your loved one can state their wishes while they're still able. which can lead to better caregiving success and a more comfortable and dignified ending for your loved one and for you as you watch them. Care team development. Gather close friends and family and ask who is willing to travel this journey with you. It's not an easy one and it's not for the faint of heart, but you will find that people will want to walk with you. Establish a mechanism to communicate the journey, such as caringbridge.org, a family blog site, a group text, or something like that. Include your loved one in care planning, including late stage care plans, as much as their constitution allows. This is empowering and reassuring for the person living with dementia to build their own healthcare team. It also provides reassurance that their care partner will not have to face the future alone. Steve found great solace in knowing our children and close family and friends would be there not only for him, but for me also. Next slide. Alzheimer's disease and other related dementias are diseases of the brain that require a plan for long-term care and support. As a caregiver, you'll need to determine what does it mean when someone you love is experiencing a disease that slowly steals part of their brain. Think about how you will provide support and what resources will work for you and your own personal preferences. Find out where you would find the resources that are available. Connect with places where resources are accessible to you. And we will have a number of them at the end of the presentation and in the accompanying guidebook that people can get that via email if they email you, correct? Care planning. And this is, again, Karen, if you want to jump in anywhere here, this is really social work. Start with having your loved one write down their thoughts if they're able to. What do they want? What do they envision? Identify resources. Find information and support services. Do this before you're too busy with caregiving if you can. Financial planning. Get your estate in order. It's very helpful to have that. Advanced directives. Identify who will help with medical and financial decision making down the road. Caregiver support. Look around and find who your fellow advocates are and find support in them. And then, as we said, develop a care team. Build a network to support yourself or the caregiver. There's a website here, Honoring Choices, which you'll get it in the booklet, but it helps weed through some of these things we just talked about. Getting started. Help is available. The Alzheimer's Association is one of the first places we turned. AARP and the Alzheimer's Family Support Center of Cape Cod. Next. Legal and financial planning. Obtain legal assistance to help prepare for your advanced planning documents, such as durable power of attorney for healthcare proxy, durable power of attorney for finances, a living will, DNR, DNI, CMO. We'll go into these in a few slides from now. Seek guidance from elder law attorneys as needed. It can be a complicated path to organizing finances, so it's so wonderful to have an elder law attorney guide you. Next. Advanced directives. What does that mean? A healthcare proxy is a document that establishes a family member or individual of your choice to make healthcare decisions on your behalf should you become unable to do so. For example, when someone is in a coma. Durable power of attorney. This is similar to a healthcare proxy, but does not require one to be unconscious or otherwise unable to communicate to be in effect. It also extends to other domains outside the healthcare, like finances and property. DNR, do not resuscitate. This is an order that prevents medical personnel from restarting your heart if it stops by shocking it and or using chest compressions. And again, we will have that resource in the mostmass.org website for you later on. DNI, do not intubate. This is an order that prevents medical personnel from intubating a person, i.e. putting in a machine that breathes for you. CMO stands for comfort measures only. This is an order that allows treatment only to address pain and discomfort from an illness, not the underlying condition. This also indicates no life-saving treatment will be enacted. I like to say too that for caregivers, there'd be times where I'd say, I just need comfort measures only, CMO only. That sometimes could just be Ben & Jerry's ice cream. So I really want to highlight Karen here when I say social workers are awesome. And because of their humble and nurturing nature, that undoubtedly draws them to this vocation. You will never hear them say that about themselves, but I say it every chance I can get. Social workers are professionals specifically licensed and trained to assist patients and their families in navigating the multitude of healthcare systems. Ask your doctor for a referral. Talk with your local senior center to find resources. Social workers can provide emotional support and counseling, facilitate communication and coordination between care team members. They can act as an advocate, navigate advanced directives. They can translate the medical language for you, and they will work to ensure adequate insurance coverage, such as Medicare and Medicaid. They can assist you in identifying and applying for community resource programs. I remember when it was first suggested to Steve and I that we reach out to a social worker. I thought, I'm not a battered wife. I don't need a social worker. And I just had no idea. And I think a lot of people have no idea how much a social worker is there. I mean, they are truly the therapeutic prosthetic to the journey of dementia. Social engagement. This is vital. It's so important to remain socially engaged for the caregiver and the person diagnosed. As a matter of fact, it's even prescribed. And you'll see here a few opportunities that offer some social engagement. There are memory cafes across the state. This JFC Boston one happens to be a favorite one of mine that Steve and I attended. There's first Saturdays at the Museum of Fine Arts. Al's meetups with the Alzheimer's Association and support groups certainly lend that social engagement that we so need. And speaking of support group, the best thing a caregiver can do for another caregiver is to say, you're not alone. We know we can't fix it for each other, but if we can stand together, it can make a difference. You're not alone in dealing with dementia. And there are more than 50 different support groups for patients and caregivers throughout the state of Massachusetts. And they're facilitated by seasoned social worker, not seasonal. They probably would like to be seasonal, but they're well seasoned. Support groups can provide emotional support and facilitate group activities. Sometimes there's a chance to learn new skills and rediscover past hobbies and interests. It's a fantastic opportunity to meet new people who share similar experiences in coping with the disease. Some of the best friends that I have made have been found through my support group. We understand things that others may not, and we learn from each other's successes and the things that aren't as successful. I remember thinking the first time I went to support group, do I really need to hear others' stories, or do they need to hear mine in the midst of all we are going through? Was there value for me in attending? And then I found that listening to others inspired me. It made me feel that if others could do it, given their unique challenges, which could look very, very different than mine, then it was inspiration for me that I could do it. Next. Considering research participation, great. This is a very, very personal decision that happened to work well for us. Getting involved in research can offer an avenue for creating a legacy when someone knows that they will not be here for many years. Steve couldn't teach his grandchildren to sail, but through his research, he taught them how to create hope from a terminal diagnosis. It was an activity we could do together. He was the participant and I was the study partner. It's really the only way that a cure is going to be found. It can be very, very empowering to know that you're a valued contributor to future generations not having to deal with this disease. And even if you're tentative about clinical trials, there are observational trials. And then brain donation is a way to take part in research across the MGB. On a personal note, when Steve was asked if he'd be interested in donating his brain in the future, he responded, "That's a no-brainer, take it." I like to say that he left his brain to Mass General and his heart to me, and I'm blessed to keep them together in my work. COVID has wreaked some havoc with research temporarily, but researchers have found a way and to safely continue their projects, and it's even ramping up more. Next. This next segment is the caregiver takes the wheel. And I like to say this is when you go from being care partner to caregiver. Your loved one is declining, and now it's your turn to navigate. Next. Key truths to caregiving and Alzheimer's disease. And I bet Karen would really support these. You probably, how many times a week do you say this? It's okay to not be okay. Nothing about someone going through a dementia diagnosis is okay.
Yep. Almost every hour I'm meeting with folks, we need to be reminded.
Yeah, I think we all carry this innate guilt that we must be okay through this, but it's okay to not be okay. And you must maintain your health in order to provide the care that you want to provide. So you have to admit also that it's okay to be angry and work out ways that you want to cope with that anger. It can be frustrating when a loved one is repeating themselves while you're trying to get something done, or if they keep putting the butter in the cabinet or the milk, on the TV stand. It's just always helpful if you can call yourself to a mindful place and put yourself in their shoes and say, they're not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. They didn't ask for this diagnosis or this kind of symptom that accompanies it. So if you can try to bring yourself to that place, it can be helpful. Try to agree, divert, and distract. Meet your loved one in their reality and step into their shoes and try to see their environment as they are seeing it. Consider getting caregiver training, a savvy caregiver training, and that will be in your PDF of resources also. Changing conversations. You're going to find that conversation changes dramatically as the disease progresses. You need to change your tactics for navigating conversation. When I would have frustration and think, why do I have to change conversation? Why is this different? Why is Steve's direction different than it used to be? I tried to remind myself that this is a renaissance of sorts. So it opened doors to new kinds of conversations. And if I tried to listen to the place that he was, it would help me enter those new conversations. Next. Again, just reinforcing, right? Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes. How many times have we had to do that with our computers? But that's including you as a caregiver. Next. Self-care promotes caregiving endurance. I cannot state this enough, and I'm sure Karen would say the same. Karen, do you have, I'm sure this is also a common thing for you about the oxygen. Would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, this metaphor of the oxygen mask when we're traveling via plane is such a crucial one to keep in our mind when we think about sustaining our role as a caregiver. So that flight attendant, instructs us, if the masks come down, to put ours on first and then put on the mask of those around us, maybe a small child, someone who is having difficulty putting it on. And that is because if we don't have oxygen coming into ourselves, if we don't have wellness coming in, it's hard for us to provide that for somebody else and be there for somebody else. So keep putting on your oxygen mask.
Indeed. Thank you. Next. Medical and behavioral changes. With medications, try to pay attention to side effects and report them to your loved one's doctor. Sometimes just changing the time of intake of a medication can be helpful in alleviating side effects. As communication becomes more challenging, behavioral changes may occur as your loved one struggles to express their needs, desires, discomfort, and more. Caregivers must monitor the loved one's physical comfort. Check for pain, infection, a full bladder, fatigue, hunger, dehydration, elevated body temperature. It's hard to imagine that at a point in this disease that people can not be able to vocalize that they need to use the restroom. So if you become the goalkeeper sort of physical symptoms, you might be able to assist them with that. Avoid being confrontational or arguing about facts. Meet your loved ones wherever they are. If Steve was in the middle of a hallucination, I tried to see through his lens and meet him there with my response. It was not always successful, but it was my goal. Redirect a person's attention. There were times when Steve would say, I want to go home. And to this I would respond, give me 15 minutes to catch my breath, get us a cold drink, and then we'll go. Other times I would say, wherever we are together, we're at home, and I'd give him a hug. And usually this was enough of a distraction. Make sure you allow rest between stimulating events. I come from a very large family where we love to get together and go for hours and sing and eat and then sing some more. And I realized as time went on, Steve needed rest between those events. Couldn't do that 3 nights in a row. Couldn't even do it 4 hours in a row. So try to keep those things in mind, especially on the holidays. Next, care management. Establish a means of communication with your loved one's doctor to convey challenges. I've heard people say that they went in so that you don't have to say everything in front of your loved one. I remember someone going in and saying, doctor, here's the recipe that you asked me for. And they had everything that was going on with their loved one written down, so they didn't have to say it out loud in front of the doctor. That was a little means of communication that I had with his doctor also. Have a backup person who can also communicate any issues that arise. I used to record conversations on voice memo on my phone so I could then share them with our children. This ensured accurate conveying of information and alleviated the need for Steve to have to sit through and listen to it all over again. Identify any services available through your local senior center, church community groups, and look again at mass.gov website. Keep a list of medications, doctor's phones, and directions readily accessible. I kept these in the notepad on my iPhone. Next. Next slide. Tips for communicating with your loved one. And Christine and Nancy, give me a nod. I think our own Doreen Rentz put this together, correct? Never argue with someone. These, agree with them. Never reason with someone. Try to divert their attention. Never shame them, rather distract them. Don't lecture, reassure. Don't say, remember, I told you that. Rather reminisce. Don't say, I told you. If someone has forgotten, chances are you should repeat and regroup. Don't say you can't. Focus on what they can do. Never command or demand someone. Ask or model. A simple example of that can be brushing teeth. Do not condescend people. Rather encourage them. Don't force people, rather reinforce. And here are some great examples here of a person with Alzheimer's or other dementia who's saying, I want to go home. And a response you might say is, tell me about your home. Or someone might say, what time is it? And a caregiver may respond, what do you need? How are you feeling? Next. Late stage. Next. As things change, you need to assess the options for supervision. Options for supervision. And you need to think about different kind of care as this dementia advances. A rotation of family members and friends, sometimes a volunteer or paid caregivers, a personal care aide. Adult daycare may work for people. Respite care, assisted living facilities, assisted living facility with a memory unit, nursing home, which has a skilled nursing facility, palliative care, and then hospice. And where do I find these resources? Respite care. There can be times when the stress of caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's can feel really overwhelming, especially as time goes on and the disease progresses. And like Karen said earlier, you have to have the oxygen on you first before you can continue. So a respite care service offers caregivers a chance to take a time to rest and attend to their own self-care with comfort of knowing that their loved one is in a safe environment. Sometimes you might just need to get away with your daughter for the weekend. You might have a conference you need to attend. But respite also, my screen went black. There we go. Respite also offers patients the opportunity to engage in new activities and socialize with new people. These services are offered both at home and in facilities. Next. Respite, emergency support, and care delivery programs. So while Meals on Wheels is listed, I found that people really want to help out and don't always know what to do. Consider setting up a care calendar account or helping hands to have your community help with dinner, rides, and more. In the last few months that Steve was at home, our community provided us with a complete dinner each night. I can never, ever explain what a help this was adequately. I left a cooler on our front porch so we wouldn't be intruded upon at dinner time. This alleviated me needing to shop, cook, clean, and allowed me extra time to spend with him. I wanted to highlight Hilarity for Charity, which they call it HFC, created by Seth Rogen and his wife, actress Lauren Miller. And it provides respite grants for caregivers in need. You can visit their website, which will provide. And I had 2 friends who received that grant, and it was extremely helpful. It's also a good idea to register your loved one with your local police department in case they ever got lost. Again, it's better to be proactive rather than reactive. They will have knowledge of who your loved one is and will have a photo of them. All of these steps can save time in situations when time may be critical. Safe return and medic alert bracelets for you and your loved one. I remember one time that I came out of a ladies' room in a crowded hotel and saw that Steve had moved from the place I asked him to stay. He had gotten swept up in a crowd and had walked down a flight of stairs. I found him quickly, thank goodness, and he told me he had remained calm because he knew he had his bracelet on. It was also important that I wore a bracelet because if I had ever been in an accident, emergency responders would have known to contact my daughter rather than to call the house and get Steve. I told Steve that we both wore the bracelet so people would know we were going together and were going steady. And in truth, they did end up being synonymous with our wedding bands. Next, day programs. They offer a variety of services for patients that focus on engagement and specific activities and offer the opportunity to socialize and meet new people in a different environment. And it allows for a couple of hours a day for caregivers to attend to other things in their life. And many programs offer to have families tour their facilities to ensure that the services and environment are a good fit. I made the decision to have Steve attend a day program a few days a week after he tried leaving the dentist office twice while I was having dentist work done. I knew I needed to have him someplace so I could attend to appointments I needed to attend to. I told him that he was going to volunteer at a senior program and that if he could make one person smile while he was there, then he had accomplished a very important job. I heard him say to my sister once, "I don't have a lot to do there, but I make people smile and that feels good." As the time went on and his disease progressed, I kept his neurologist's signature on a piece of paper in the car. And when he would say, "I don't want to go today," I would respond, "I know, I understand, but Dr. Teresa has prescribed this for you," and I'd hold up the piece of paper with the signature. Next. Bereavement, a stage I can well relate with. Next. Caregiver grief is heavy and complicated given the nature of Alzheimer's disease because a lot of loss occurs before death. Some useful tools are meditation, seeking therapy from a therapist, daily mantras, and different things of remembrance. I had invited a group of people one time to tie purple strings around their wrist. And we would know that they were thinking of us and anybody who was on their Alzheimer's journey. And it was also to help them remember that we were fighting for memories. I still run into people from across the country who ask me to send them purple strings to tie on the wrists to remember their loved ones and all who are fighting. Greg O'Brien, as a matter of fact, the author of On Pluto, I send him about 25 purple strings a year because he likes to wear them. And you'll see in his videos that he always has his purple string on. Just a little sign that, you know, we're tied together in this drive to get through. This is what resources will I need? Again, we talked about memory cafe for social interaction, senior center drop-ins, driving evaluation centers, You may need help managing at home with companion services and home care support. And you may need help finding memory care or services out of the home, whether they be long-term care, memory care, or daycare services. And you'll see down over there the 5 tips for caregiving that we've talked about. Next. Here are some resources. The MGH, now the MGB Division of Palliative Care and Geriatric Care, has a Dementia Care Collaborative, and they have speaker series that are virtual and support groups. It's a great place to reach out to. Hebrew Senior Life, Caregiver Action Network. Again, all these resources will be in the PDF book. The Massachusetts Office of Elder Affairs program of All-Inclusive Care PACE. You may have heard of that program. Mass.gov, the MOLST, which has those legal forms that we talked about earlier, and the Family Caregiver Support Program, and Dementia Friendly Massachusetts. Next. In case you didn't know, the Alzheimer's Association has a 24/7 helpline. And what I like to say to people as caregivers, you don't have to be bleeding on the floor and need an ambulance before you reach out and make this call. You can call them to ask where support groups are in your area, or a simple question or a referral. The Alzheimer's Support Center of Cape Cod are doing amazing things, and they definitely lead towards culture enrichment and art, and a lot of their stuff has gone virtual. And the Beth Israel and the Spalding driving programs, important for you to be able to have those. You know, the driving is a big issue. And I don't know, Karen, if you want to say anything about that, about driving and how to approach that with a loved one.
Yeah, that's a really big and important topic. I would say, much like establishing your advanced directives and your long-term care wishes, you kind of want to start the conversation of driving and driving retirement early on, as early as possible. And that way you can have the person with the diagnosis actively involved in the planning about when they might consider retiring or when they might consider a driving evaluation. And then always, you know, look into your village. Part of your village is the medical team. You want to have them involved in on the conversation as well. Yes.
Excellent.
And then the driving evaluation programs for sure are definitely a very valuable resource. Yeah.
I was very lucky that Steve was kind of cognizant. We had grandchildren, young grandchildren at the time, and he knew he didn't want them in the car. And he said to me one day, I'm not going to drive anymore because there's too many beautiful children in our town, and I couldn't handle it if I ever hurt one of them. Here are just more resources. I mean, so this is the thing. We're hoping that having all these resources in one place can really be your new guide as you navigate caregiving, and not have to search and surf the web. Next. And there are more resources out there. Again, yeah. So again, I'm 4 years out of my husband passing away and having gone through this disease, so I can approach it in a much more calm way now. And I tend to share my successes much more so than my less than successful times. And sometimes you don't know where you make a failure until you make it, and just be kind to yourself when there are failures along the way, and we learn from them. So I thank you all for being here tonight, and would love to open the floor up for questions, because we're, like I say, we're very lucky to have Karen here tonight. And yeah.
Judy, I had gotten a couple questions in advance. If there
Okay.
are no other pressing questions, I can ask these on behalf of the folks who sent them. So the first one is, my husband has mild cognitive impairment. What are the benefits of him joining a clinical trial?
Wonderful. Christine, I might ask you to stop sharing your screen and so we can see each other's faces while we have this conversation. Excellent. Thank you. So, the benefits of a clinical trial, that is, it's again, we don't know that, possibly things may be, I'm sorry, I'm trying to, my screen is doing funny things. Getting involved, I don't know. With a diagnosis of dementia, right now, we have no cure. Clinical trial is literally the only pathway towards hope for a cure. And I've heard it said many times that the first survivor of Alzheimer's will have been in a clinical trial. So there may be direct benefits, but there is also the chance that you might get a placebo in the trial. And there's a chance that, the drug may not work. So again, like I said, that's a very personal decision. Some people they want to take up arms and fight this with anything they can, and a clinical trial can offer a pathway to that. Karen, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think one added benefit is for some people, they also have, I guess, anecdotally speaking, like people have the added benefit of, being regularly followed in some capacity with professionals out there in the dementia world. And that can just feel like a nice holding space. And,
yeah,
posing questions as they come up. That's what I've heard from folks who have been involved in research trials.
That's a great thing to mention, because I do remember, like, oh, you have Alzheimer's, we'll see you in 6 months. And I was like, but when you join it is. When you join a clinical trial or an observational trial, you have eyes on you, and your vitals are being taken, and your loved ones are being spoken to, and you feel part of a team and part of a solution.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question, and the question is, my wife is refusing to tell our children about her recent diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's disease. How should I handle this issue?
Karen, that's for you.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a tough one. And, it's an individual process. I think both for the person who has been given the diagnosis, they're going to need some time in their own way to sort of wrap their head around this diagnosis and what that means to them, what that means for their future. And so, I think as the person in the care partner caregiver role, it can be really painful because we want to maybe share the news to build our community, and really working towards holding that space with our person to sort of, help them express themselves, what this diagnosis means to them, what their worries are, can be really helpful. And I think this is also maybe a good time, plugging my profession here, to get linked with a social worker to offer you both that space to talk through the diagnosis and disclosure. It's again, a big milestone in the journey.
I remember Karen saying to Steve, do you want to tell people or not? Because I was kind of thinking maybe I didn't. He said, for goodness sake, of course I do. He said, I'm forgetting things and I'm stumbling over words. I want people to know I have an illness. I'm not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it was made all the difference for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be a huge step. And I recognize, you know, there's such a spectrum of experiences, right? For some people, they can have such immense shame around the diagnosis. And again, you know, that's okay, right? That's their experience. But again, sort of, you know, offering them a space to recognize that this is a disease. This is not something that they cause, that what the changes that they're experiencing and presenting with are symptoms of this disease. Just like, you know, if we have a cancer or, you know, we break a leg and we can't walk normally because of that broken leg, you know. Yeah, it's a process, but it can be a really meaningful one, and developing the community and acceptance out there and normalizing the experience. Yeah.
And I think the more we talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
and are more open about it, and I mean, I just have to say I applaud everybody here tonight, because I'm guessing everybody here is either on a caregiving journey or has been or will be. And I applaud you for taking the step to be here.
Well, thank you, Judy. I'm just gonna.
We
share
have
my-
someone raised their hand. Christine, sorry.
Okay.
And Cordy.
Hi, everyone. Judy, thank you for a beautiful presentation. I always feel so much calmer after hearing your voice. My question, my mom was diagnosed with dementia. They were very unspecific. You know, the neurologist didn't say, and she's 80, didn't say, you know, you have run-of-the-mill dementia, you have Alzheimer's. I don't know if they categorize it, whatever. But, and, you know, we knew that that was probably the case. She had been exhibiting symptoms of forgetfulness for, I'd say, about a good 6 months or a year up to that point of diagnosis. She is on memantine and donepezil. But what I find mildly frustrating, and her neurologist and the neurologist staff, they're excellent, is, you know, I'm kind of looking for what do I expect? You know, how long? Right now, she's very happy. She knows she has dementia. She's kind of like, I can't remember stuff, but I'm happy and I don't really care, and that's okay. And I'm 80 years old. But my feeling is, based on speaking with other people in similar situations, that, you know, there's going to be times where she gets really frustrated or angry or whatever. And I want to be, I guess I'm looking for kind of a timeline, and I know it's so individual, but is this common that, you know, you don't get a clear picture and you kind of just have to roll with it until the time comes?
Do you
Anyone
want
wanna
me to
answer
take
that
that, Judy?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This, and thank you so much for posing this question. This is a very common question that we get. And I think one that myself, as well as other medical professionals out there, it is a hard question to answer, because not one timeline is universal. You know, I think how I like to think about it is we can use the past to sort of framework the future. So if we've been on a slow and steady pace, then we can probably anticipate that for the future, knowing that anytime there's like a medical event or like a stressful event of some kind, that we might notice a more significantly feeling like stair step down in abilities.
Okay.
But yeah, it is really hard to like give specific years or timeline.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. Around Christmas time, after her diagnosis and when she first started on the medication, she was having negative reactions and refused to take them. And she just said, you know, I feel like if this is what I have, I'm not going to, it's not going to cure me, or it's just going to prolong the inevitable or keep me where I'm at. And I don't like the effects of them. So that was a battle in the beginning. And then around Christmas time, she started falling, and she had never had this type of problem before. And it went on for like about a week, every day falling. And it was really scary. And she ended up one time actually needing stitches, and she had gone to the emergency room. They sent her home. She was a little dehydrated, etc. But ultimately she was hospitalized. And my sister and I were thinking, did she all of a sudden like kind of walk off a cliff with regard to her dementia, or is this something else? And it turned out that she had a UTI, she had COVID. She didn't have any symptoms of either of these things except for the falling. And then they also diagnosed her with orthostatic hypotension. And so, all of that was going on. The good news was, and it was a really difficult hospitalization and then also rehab, but they got her meds all set. And so now she's on those meds, and she doesn't even know, I mean, she knows that she's on them, but she doesn't even, there are no more complaints about this side effect or that side effect. But, that was the scary part. Like, we didn't know. I said to her neurologist, I was like, oh my God, is this our new normal? Not realizing that it was, a very basic, diagnosis of the UTI and COVID. And so, that's the kind of stuff that I worry about. I mean, she lives downstairs from me, so that is really helpful, but I'm just kind of riding the wave of, enjoying that she's in a good place right now and she's happy. I mean, she'll do things like watch a video of Bruno Mars, like a concert, and just for hours, and she's very into it and happy. And so as long as that goes on, I'm good, and we'll just deal with whatever comes. But I didn't know if that was common, that, I figured that it was very individualistic, but I just didn't know if, I mean, I've seen with other, friends, I had a friend whose mom just passed away a year ago, and they were very specific. She has this kind of Alzheimer's, and it's affecting this part of her brain, and this is what you can expect, which is very different from, the information I got. I mean, not that one is better than the other, but I was just curious. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Keep up the good work of, knowing your mom, and sort of when we see these acute changes in their abilities or their disposition, rule out the medical stuff first. That's a good first step. So keep up the good work with, working with the team, sharing the changes that you're noticing over time, or even an acute event.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'm just going to pull that last slide back up, Judy. Again, thank you, everyone, for attending this presentation. You can see Nancy Koppelman's email there if there are any additional questions. Again, you will all be receiving momentarily after this presentation, and again tomorrow, an email with a link to a brief survey. We'd just love to get everyone's feedback. It's also an opportunity to get some further information from us. And you all should have in your event, when you get the notification for your registration for this event, you should have gotten the link to the roadmap to caregiving PDF that Judy has referenced several times. So that is a great resource as well. And that's also located on our website, again, madrc.org. So thank you to Judy very much. Thank you to Karen, and thank you to everybody for attending. And we hope everybody has a great night, and we look forward to seeing you. Keep your eye on our events page on our website and see what other events that we have coming up as well.
Thank you all. Be well.
Take care.